Good morning, everyone. We are so happy you decided to spend your Monday morning with us. We're so excited to continue our bi-monthly webinar series focusing on water quality as it relates to animal agriculture. And we hope that through this series, we can connect key stakeholders for a better understanding of important topics, as well as serving as a networking platform for everyone involved. So another note, I just wanted to make sure you all know, we will be continuing our Water Quality Wednesday webinar series for 2024, beginning January 31st. And that will kind of fit into the off months of this series. And we'll be sure to email everyone when we have our first date and topic determined. Our next webinar from this series will be Monday, October 2nd. So please feel free to throw ideas you have for topics in the chat or email us afterwards. Our team loves feedback, and this webinar series is for you guys, so we want you to have some input. So this morning's webinar is going to be discussing Sidedress manure research, as well as the H2Ohio updated manure practice standards. So this morning we'll discuss first some study design of our project dealing with manure Sidedress. We'll talk through some data collection and research findings. Amber is going to talk about next steps for the research. Then we'll turn it over to Katie, and she will talk about the H2Ohio manure practice standards, and we'll wrap up with a Q&A session. So questions for both Amber and Katie can be put in the Q&A box, and we'll answer all of those together at the very end of today's webinar. So introducing today's speakers, first up we have Amber Emmons, CCA. She is the Water Quality Extension Associate for Henry Wood and Ottawa counties, so my counterpart here at OSU Extension, and she's going to be talking about our Habry Manure Research Project and some results from that. And then second, we have Katie Furman. She is the H2Ohio technician with Van Wert Soil and Water Conservation District, and she's going to come in and talk to us a little bit about those updates for the H2Ohio manure practice and other relevant information. So first, we'll turn it over to Amber here.
Okay, you should be seeing my presenting slides, correct?
Yep, looks good.
Cool. As Rachel said, my name is Amber Emmons. I am her counterpart just in Wood, Henry, and Ottawa counties as a Water Quality Extension Associate. And I'm going to talk about our, we call it our Habry project, but we're looking at the use of manure as a sidedress material and the lasting effects of using manure on your nitrogen rates. So we call it our Habry project because it is funded by the Harmful Algal Bloom Research Initiative. So that's where all this money for this project comes from, for all the testing, the on-farm research, and anything that we do, it's coming from a grant from Habry. So if I call it the Habry project and slip up, that is why, and we want to thank them for the funding for this project. So we have two experiments within this project. So there's two separate things. I'm going to go over experiment 1 first, and then I'll switch gears and go into experiment 2. But for experiment 1, we're strictly looking at using manure as a sidedress material, comparing it to then the use of commercial fertilizers. So we're using some kind of dragline or tanker to inject manure at the time of sidedress, sometime between V1, V4, and that is our first experiment. So all of these are usually applied during V1 to V4, though I will say this year with some newer technologies, we're using a cadmium. We almost went to V8, I believe, in corn, but generally we're sticking between that V1, V4 stage to apply the manure to the corn as it's growing. All of these plots are on farmers' fields. We're working with a bunch of different farmers, anywhere from the Indiana-Ohio state line in some of the counties like Van Wert, Paulding, all the way over to Wood County, and it goes north to south from Williams County, I think, down to Putnam County. So we've got a wide spread here in Northwest Ohio. So these are all done on farmers' field. We have 3 replicates. So that means we ask for at least 3 strips of manure and at least 3 strips of control fertilizer. As for the rest of the field, they're welcome to do with it what they want, but we would like at least 3 replicates of our plots. And as I said, all of these are done on farm with farmers that have agreed to cooperate with us. So there's a lot that goes into this project, and specifically for this experiment, we do a lot of different sampling. We're taking soil samples for every field. We do that prior to the manure application in those plots. And then we'll also come back at the time of harvest Whether it's within a week of harvest, whether it's prior to or after harvest doesn't really matter. We're just trying to get right around that harvest window of when they're going to be in that field. And we'll come and take some more soil samples from those same plots, same area. We will also go in a couple times during the year and get some tissue samples. At R1, which is R1 of the corn growth stages, are silking. So the tassel is out, the silks are out on the ear, and that pollination is occurring. So that's when we'll go in and we'll collect some ear leaves, that leaf connected to the ear off the corn stalks in those plots, to look at the nitrate and phosphorus data in those leaves. The other tissue we'll come in and take is stalks for a stalk nitrate test. This is done at harvest when we're coming in to take those soil samples. We'll come in, we'll cut about, I think it was about 6 inches of the stalk off. We'll go about 5-6 inches from the ground, cut a couple of those and send those in again for the nitrate data. At the end of the season, when it is harvested, we do take yield data. We'll take that generally off the farmer's yield monitor. There have been a couple instances where we had farmers who did not have yield monitors, and we had to use weigh wagons or other things to calculate the yield, but generally getting that yield from those yield monitors. Also, and this is one of the more frequent samplings, if they had tile that we could actually pull a water sample from, bi-weekly for most of the year, we're going out and collecting a water sample from a tile outlet from that field to try and look at the nitrate and phosphate data coming out of that field. In the times of the year we think there may be more runoff or there may be more nutrient loss, about April through May, we're trying to do it weekly, along with a little bit of October and November, we'll do some weekly sampling, but generally bi-weekly we were out there on these fields collecting tile outlet samples. And then the last thing is, we're also going, I don't know if we've gotten to all these fields, but we're trying to do some UAV data from above the field to try and look at the color, the spacing, to try and just a lot of data going into this project. And this is all done. This is not done just by me, as I want to point out before I get into any more of this, any more results or anything. You can see all of us from the water quality team, there's 6 of us. We've all gone out. We've done anything from the UAV data. We were out there doing the tissue sampling. We're out there doing the water sampling. So this is all done by the team. This is not done just by one person because it is a lot of work. So for experiment 1, again, I'm not touching anything else yet, but for experiment 1, we're looking at the red bars are going to be the fields that have that manure. The gray bars are going to be those those strips that were commercial fertilizer, your control strips. And we're looking at starting off with those tissue samples. The tissue samples we saw, and this is just from 1 year of study, we're looking at the percent along the y-axis there on the left, and your, again, nitrate or phosphorus is along the x-axis on the bottom. After the first year in those tissue samples we collected, those ear leaves at R1, we did not see a significant difference in either the nitrogen or phosphorus content. Again, it's very negligible differences on there, and when run through a statistics program, there was no significant difference. Continuing this, again, the red bar will always be your manure plots, the gray is your control. Along that left axis, the y-axis again this time, now we're looking at the nitrate, but it's in parts per million. So there was somewhat of a difference. The bars make it look like a lot more than it is, but it is only 11 parts per million different. And when run through a statistics program, it did not show that it was significantly different. So again, after 1 year of study, at least in 2022, the stalks did not show that they were significantly different when we looked at nitrates. Finishing up with some more data from that first experiment. We looked at then yield. And again, this was pulled from the yield monitors. The red bars, once again, the control, or the red bar is the manure, the gray bar is the control. We have bushels per acre up that y-axis on the left side. And we did see quite a bit of a difference, 202 bushels per acre average for the manure plots, only 178, almost 179 for the control plots. But when run through a statistics program, again, it was not significantly different. So we'll see after we get another year of data if this changes, but so far from experiment 1, nothing we have found was significantly different. I will say I do not show any of our soil sample results. That is because that is on a field by field basis, and we are still trying to figure out how to present that, but it is something that we're not trying to give away each farmer's data. So I do not have anything to present for the soil samples. The last thing to wrap up is the water samples. So that top graph is the rainfall events. And you're going to see it's just from Ottawa, Ohio. I selected something general in the middle of our area that I could pull water sample or water rainfall data from weather.gov. So you can see there were several larger events throughout the year because the rainfall in inches is on that left side, that y-axis. From May to May is across the bottom, May 22 to May 2023. You can see in June of 2022, we had quite a rainfall event with some coming in February, March, and April of this year, and then it got dry. But that kind of lines up then hopefully with, you can see the nitrate concentrations in the left graph on the bottom versus the phosphate concentrations on the right. And this is out of those tile outlet samples we were collecting throughout the past year, whether it's biweekly or weekly. And you can see generally in the nitrogen, we have in parts per million up that y-axis, nothing really spiked too much. But if you look, a lot of times those spikes do line up with the rainfall events, which makes sense. These tile outlets aren't going to run unless there's some rain, there's excess water in the system. So especially if you're looking at some of the bigger spikes coming in December and January, a lot of times because these fields have not had significant rain, there's nutrients sitting out there, and then we'll have some major rainfall event, several inches of rain, a couple inches of rain that comes in and flushes a lot of it out. And the same things for the phosphorus. Generally, we didn't see too much phosphorus run last year. And if you see some gaps in that, it's because there were times where it was too dry. We did not have any water coming out the tile outlets, so there was nothing to collect. So there may be breaks in this data just because we didn't have anything to collect at that time. And you can see the biggest spike so far we saw was right around just after May 12th of this year. And that was for the phosphorus concentration. And again, this likely is due to some rain event. And that's what we're seeing for a lot of these sites is if we see some kind of spike, it's generally associated with the rain event. These are averages across all of our sites. Again, we are not showing individual fields, not wanting to expose any farmer or his data, but this is an average across all of our fields for 2022. So now I'm going to switch gears into our second experiment. I've done experiment 1, and that's strictly just manure versus commercial fertilizer. Experiment 2 is a little bit different. So in experiment 2, we're kind of looking at the lasting effects of manure on your nitrogen use. If you've applied manure at all in the history of that field, could you have a different use of nitrogen than someone who's never applied manure? That was the idea. So in this one, we're comparing fields who have had a manure history, and to us, that means that farmer has applied manure on that field at least once in the last 5 years, versus a field who has never applied manure, in our terms, hasn't applied manure in the last 5 years. So we're having different nitrogen rates then in both of those fields. They're paired. They're usually within the same farmer or just down the road. So these fields are generally located together, and we're going to have different nitrogen rates in each. So here's a picture of an above field from last year. So these fields generally had about 4 or 5 nitrogen rates, and you can see the graph below. The farmers are the ones who did not have a 0 nitrogen rate. If these were done on the OSU farms, then we did have that nitrogen rate. As you can see, 3 were on farm, and we worked with farmers. We had their 50, we had the 50, 100, 150, 200 nitrogen rates. Those were done with farmers, 4 different rates. We had 3 different replications then to again get that replication effect, which you can see in the field above. You can probably guess some of them, which ones are the lower nitrogen rates and which ones are the higher nitrogen rates. If they were done on our research farms, and by research farms, I mean they were done at Worcester, they were done at the Northwest Research Farm with OSU, or down at Western, then we had the 5 nitrogen rates where we included that 0. So this one, we had just about as much sampling to do. We still did the soil samples. Those were at the beginning of the year prior to any kind of nutrient being put down. So this was done either before planting if they applied starter fertilizer, or it was done prior to Sidedress when they were going to put that nitrogen down. And then again, at the end of the year, we would come back. It's time of harvest, right around that, within a window of a week of harvest, we were going to come in and take some more soil samples from each plot. We were doing the same tissue sampling for this experiment. We came in at R1, or that silking phase where the silks are out. We take the ear leaves from each plot to look at that nitrate and phosphate data again. And then lastly, for those tissues, we again took stalks at the end of the year. That same time we were coming in to get those soil samples, we collected some stalks for the nitrate data. Lastly, again, we had yield. This was generally from yield monitors on the research farms with the farmers' yield monitors. And we do have some UAV data that we're trying to look at, analyze, and figure out how we're going to use. So this is just some preliminary look. We're just looking at our UAV data. We don't have any results necessarily from that yet, but we're trying to play around with it, look at it, and see what it can tell us, see what the drones can tell us and what we can learn from that. So now going into the results like I did for the previous experiment, starting with those tissue samples. Once again, I do not have soil sample data to show you, but I have the tissue samples. So looking at the percent nitrogen and phosphorus, that percent again is along that y-axis. Your different treatments are along the bottom. You can see that there were some differences maybe in that N1 for the nitrate data, but for the phosphorus data, it was mostly the same. And I can tell you across all of these, either nitrogen or phosphorus, none of it was significant when run through a statistics program. So after 1 year of data, it doesn't look like that manure history is going to affect the amount of nitrogen and phosphorus in your year leaves. Going on to that stock data where we're looking at nitrates. Again, this is in parts per million along the y-axis with the rates along the x-axis. It looks like there was a lot more of nitrates in those manure, the fields that have manure in them. If you just look at the bar graph on here, the red bars are much higher than the gray bars. But when run through a statistics program, it does not say it's significant. Lastly, looking at yield here. This again, there was the yield, the bushels per acre across the y-axis, your treatments across the bottom. There was no significant difference when run through a statistics program. And generally these bars look about the same. That treatment one may vary a little bit because treatment one can be a 0 rate for those research farms, but it was not significant. So wrapping up all of this, for experiment one, the Sidedress experiment, nothing from 2022 in Northwest Ohio was significant. This just shows us that if you use manure as a Sidedress material, you may not have any significant difference in your nitrate and phosphate amounts in your ear leaves, your nitrates in your stalk nitrate test, and your yield was not necessarily different. Again, this is only after 1 year of data, so it's kind of hard to tell if this is truly not significant or after this year, we might find something different. But from 2022, we did not find any significant differences. Same kind of goes for experiment 2. After 1 year of data, nothing was significant. There was no significant difference in the ear leaves, whether you applied manure in that field in the past or not. There was nothing different in their stalk nitrate tests significantly, and there was not a significant difference in yield. Again, this was only 1 year of data, so take it with a grain of salt because we are continuing to do this. As I said, going forward, this is an ongoing project. We all have about 8 Sidedress fields again this year, and we have 3 paired sites for experiment 2. So there will be more data to add to this going forward, and maybe that'll change the results after having multiple years of data for different environmental conditions, different years, different growing patterns. Maybe we'll see something different, but this is being repeated, and as of going forward after 2023, we may continue this, I don't know, but for right now, we do have current fields that we are looking at in our sampling currently. So that's a little bit of update on our HABRI project. That's what we're doing as a water quality team. I appreciate you for listening. My contact information is there if you have any questions. If you would scan that QR code, that would be great. That just gives me some feedback on how I do as teaching at these events. And I will put that link in the chat if anybody if the QR code is not something you're familiar with.
Great, thank you so much, Amber. I will leave that up here for just a minute. I have it on my screen also, just in case, you guys in the audience didn't get a chance to scan that. So like Amber said, these evaluations, they ask us to have these done a few times a year, and this helps us gauge what our audience gets from our presentation. Essentially, it helps us improve our teaching and our delivery and our content. So if you guys could fill that out for Amber, she'd really appreciate it. And if you have any questions for Amber, please enter those in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, and we will answer those at the end of both of our presentations for today. So with that, we'll move on. And next up, we have Katie. So I will turn it over to her.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Can you see my screen okay? Is it
Yes, it
on there?
looks good.
Awesome, perfect. Hey, thank you so much for having me here to present today. I'm just the H2Ohio tech here at the Van Wert Soil and Water Office, so I've been here for 2 years now. We just finished our first contract or 3-year contract with the H2Ohio program, and we're going to start enrolling into another 2-year contract for crop years 24 and 25. So I'm here to talk to you just a little bit about that, primarily focused on the manure practice today. So, it's not going. Oop, there it is. Okay. So a little bit, what is H2Ohio for those of you who have never heard of it before? H2Ohio is Governor Mike DeWine's comprehensive data-driven water quality plan to reduce harmful algae blooms, improve wastewater infrastructure, and prevent lead contamination. The Ohio Department of Agriculture is leading efforts to reduce phosphorus runoff. Producers can receive incentive payments for implementing proven, cost-effective, best management practices on their land. So what do we ask of a producer who is enrolled into the H2Ohio program? What we're going to ask first and foremost is you create a 2-year nutrient management plan. Whether you use a crop consultant, ag retailer, or yourself, create a plan of what you're going to put on fertilizer-wise for your crop for the next 2 years. Next step is you're going to choose your best management practice fit for your farming practices. So you'll contact your local soil and water district technician and sign up for appropriate incentive practices that fit your farming operation. And then finally, we will complete and verify the practices. Producers must keep all your fertilizer application records, bills, and receipts in order to fulfill those practices. Currently, these are the H2Ohio counties. It originally started with the 14 green counties. We call those original counties. And they are the ones that have just completed the 3-year contracts and is open for another 2-year contracts with these updated standards. The counties in yellow here, they are the 10 additional counties that joined just a little bit later. And they after 2025, they will have succeeded their contracts, and then we will all be able to get on together. So these counties, we cover the Western Lake Erie Basin. So as you can see over here, here is the watersheds that H2Ohio covers. Now there is talks of potentially opening it statewide, but as of right now, these counties are the only ones open for H2Ohio. Just a little bit about the practices. They're transitioning. We had 7 incentive practices available this last contract year, but we're transitioning it to 4. Each practice will have their own pay rates and guidelines. First and foremost, you must have a verified nutrient management plan or CNMP in order to sign up to receive any of the practice incentive payments. What to look forward to here, crop year 24 and 25, there are lots of updates and changes from the original program's practice and guidelines. Today, again, I'm just going to talk to you about the manure ones, but please contact your local SWCD if you want to learn more about the other practices and possibly enrolling for a 2-year contract. Will be open for re-enrollments or new enrollments starting September 5th. And everything this year is going to be done through a program online called My Farms. So I know that's really scary for farmers to work online sometimes, but please contact your Soil and Water. We are more than willing to help you get started online, help you up online. And also it's less paper on the desk for us and easier to keep track of online. Okay, now we're going to dig into the manure utilization practice. There's been a lot of updates and changes to this practice, and I'm going to just break it down for you here. So what is the purpose? What is the purpose of the manure utilization for H2Ohio? Picture to the left is what we use. We call it a manure guidance tool. We use this in the last contract year, but with the new My Farms program, it's going to be redeveloped. So I'm just having this here as kind of a visual for you guys to see what we kind of look for. So First off, we want to encourage the application and incorporation of manure into a growing crop or to apply manure in the spring through the fall time frame. We're going to reduce the risk of manure and nutrient runoff onto a field into the water and to better utilize nitrogen and phosphorus contained into the manure. Here is what we look for. You'll need a manure analysis developed. So here's just an example. And the key nutrients that we look at is the ammonium nitrate, the organic nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, where we will plug it in. We'll ask if you want a 1 year or 2 year rate. We'll put the crop in for the next year. So if you're applying manure this fall, it's going to be for the 2024 crop. We'll put that in over here. We'll fill in from your nutrient analysis over here, your time frame, whether you're going to incorporate it after wheat in the summertime or in the fall time after an early bean. And then it would calculate your minimum and maximum rate of application. So as long as you stayed within the minimum and maximum rate, you would qualify for a manure payment. And again, you can either, well, I'll get into the types of methods here in a little bit. But again, this is just a visual with the new My Farms program. We're going to regenerate how we calculate the application rate for the manure. Manure utilization eligibility. So this applies only to cropland acres, a little bit obvious there. And then acres receiving payments under any other nutrient management program. So anybody that has acres under CSP or EQIP, they're not going to be eligible for any H2Ohio payment, not just for the manure practice. So producers is eligible for 1 payment per field annually. So what that means is if you apply manure in the fall time and you want to put more manure on in the spring, as long as your field calls for that much manure, it is allowed, but you will only receive 1 payment per application. The soil test P level requirements. So these, when we get your soil test, we're gonna first look at your phosphorus level. As long as your levels are within 33.75 parts per million or less, it is eligible for a manure payment. Anything higher does not require phosphorus, and we will not, it will not be eligible for the manure practice. And then finally, any documented discharge of manure may result in an automatic forfeit of payment or dismissal from the H2Ohio program. Specifications. First, producers must have an improved nutrient management plan. So back a couple of slides ago, I talked about having an ag retailer, yourself, a CNMP writer, create a nutrient management plan for each of your fields. You actually can't, that's the first step to even enter into H2Ohio, so you have to have that made up in order for you to enroll in the manure practice. Fields receiving manure must have soil tests showing Malic 3 levels 50 parts per million or less. So back to my previous slide, what we just talked about. And then the plant available nitrogen applied through the manure shall not exceed the nitrogen recommendations for the existing crop or following year's plant crop, whichever is applicable. If the following crop is a legume, nitrogen can be applied at the nitrogen removal rate for the legume crop to a maximum of 150 pounds of plant available nitrogen at the time of application. Second, manure cannot be surface applied to frozen snow cover or saturated soils. So a little bit, this is a little obvious stuff. Before I go any further, these specifications, I do have paper copies. So that is something, if you're interested in, get a hold of your local soil and water, and they can send you and give you the paper copy of the standards. Next, third, manure cannot be surface applied if there is a greater than 50% chance of precipitation exceeding ½ inch in the next 24 hours. A cover crop is required for manure applications completed after July 1st, where a growing crop is not present. So does the cover crop have to be overwintering? The answer is no. We just require a cover crop to go into the soil by November 1st, which is number 5. in order to complete the manure practice. Methods. So first method, all manure shall be injected or incorporated to a minimum of 2 inches below the surface. Surface applied manure must be incorporated using a full width tillage tool to mix the manure within the soil. So if you have an injection applicator that can inject into the soil, that is great. Or if you broadcast any manure, it must be incorporated within the soil within 24 hours. Manure shall be applied after April 20th and before crop emergence and must be incorporated within 24 hours of application. So having a spring option basically is new this year. Within the last contract year, it was only after wheat harvest in the fall time, but this year we are offering different methods. Manure may be applied to wheat or overwintering cover crop with a grassland applicator or comparable equipment after green up, and this is before November 1st. Manure is applied via sidedress injection to a growing crop after emergence. So I'll play this little video that we watched. And then all manure will be injected or incorporated to a minimum of 2 inches below the surface. Surface applied manure must be incorporated using a full width tillage tool to mix the manure within the soil. Manure is injected directly into the soil and established cover crops with minimal surface disruption prior to November 1st. Some of these sound pretty repetitive, so I apologize. And then manure is surface applied after harvest of a crop and incorporated within 24 hours application. Furthermore, all applications are completed by November 1st. I basically took what is in the standards and I put them here in a breakdown PowerPoint for you. So again, contact your soil and water. We can get you these standards that are on paper. Now, this is a new in-season application. So first and foremost, manure may be irrigated from June 15th to August 1st. So any dairy operations that want to use their irrigation systems, they now have an option to get an incentive payment through H2Ohio by doing that. Secondly, manure may be applied to a perennial forage immediately after the harvest of a perennial forage. Then pin pack or dry manure. So this cannot be pumped through a drag line. Applied after April 20th and before July 1st does not have to be incorporated if there is a 75% crop residue at the time of application. And then pin pack or dry manure applied after the harvest of a small grain and before August 15th on an established cover crop does not have to be incorporated if there is a 75% living cover. So if you're able to get your weed off on time, get a cover crop in right away, and you want to apply manure on top of that, as long as there is a 75% residue there, you're good to go without having to incorporate. Manure incentive payments. Here's what everybody likes to see. So for this year, we did change it. Previously, we did chicken litter versus other manure. Now we're moving on to dry manure versus liquid. So for dry manure, which is your poultry litter and your pen pack, you're getting $35 an acre. Obviously, as long as your field calls for it, follows your nutrient management plan, you follow all those proper specification procedures. And then all other manure, so this is, your dairy, your liquid dairy, your swine, that is getting $60 an acre. And then we do have a bonus payment that we are going to make for $15 an acre bonus on the field. If the field you choose to apply manure on is less than 25 parts per million Malic 3. So go back a couple slides to that chart I was showing you of our phosphorus levels that they need to be at. If yours is below that 25 parts per million Malic 3, then it would qualify for that bonus payments. So payments will be made on acres where manure application was complete. So if you have a 50-acre field and you only apply to 30 of the acres, H2Ohio is only going to pay on those 30 acres that manure was applied on. Payments will be made annually after all requirements have been verified. So since part of the verification process is to have a cover crop, manure payment cannot be made until after March 15th, which is that cover crop deadline. Now for the in-season application, so if you decide to irrigate or put it on, after the April 20th deadline, we're going to follow what all the other nutrient management one is. Once you have all your paperwork and documentation in, we will be able to honor that payment. Second one, if a 2-year manure application rate is made, only one payment will be made in that 2-year time. So again, if we go back to our manure guidance tool, I talked a little bit about how if you wanted to choose a 1-year rate or a 2-year rate, we are only going to pay for the year it was applied. So if you put it on in the fall of 23 and it's a 2-year rate, that is, you'll receive, it will be called a 24 payment, and that would be the only manure payment for that field. Also, no more nutrients may be applied until those nutrients have been utilized. Last, only one manure utilization payment will be made per field annually, regardless how many applications are made. So kind of what I just described. Thank you so much, you guys, for having me come. I know that was probably a lot of information. If you have any questions, we can talk about them a little bit. And if you want any more information about the sign-up process, the new standard guidelines, I'll be happy to talk about it, but also contact your local soil and water. They have all that information and will be able to help you through the process.
Great, thank you so much, Katie. And I'll leave her contact info up here for the next minute or so. We're gonna get into the Q&A session now. So if you have any questions for either of today's presenters, go ahead and put those in the Q&A and we'll get to those. There was a question that came through here about a minute ago for you, Katie, in the chat. So if your parts per million is between 25 and 50, that's where you just get the $35 for dry manure. And if it's less than 25, you get an extra 15?
Yes. So if your parts per million, we have to think if it's whether it's Bray or Malick. So if we're looking at a Malick 3 parts per million, it has to be 50 or less. And then if it's less than 25, you get that extra 15. So yes, 35 if we're talking about dry manure per acre.
Okay, great. Also, we will get CCA credits and CLM credits offered here towards the end of the webinar. I have a question for you, Amber. So we're taking water samples for the Havre project. So are those data from that sampling meeting the 40% reduction in phosphorus that's required for Lake Erie? So like, are farmers doing things right? What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, it's a great question about asking if we are meeting that standard of we need to have a 40% reduction by 2025, which is coming up. When I showed those graphs, you can tell generally those lines are pretty low, except when I had those spikes, which I explained was due to rainfall. So generally looking across those line graphs, majority of the time, yes, the farmers are meeting those reductions. They're having those lower levels of phosphorus leave their field. The only time we've seen so far after just this 1 year of our water sampling is in those heavy rainfall events, which no one can predict. When you get those 2, 3, 4 inches of rain in a couple hours, that is when we're seeing a huge influx of phosphorus, which does not obviously meet that 40% reduction. But generally, yes, it seems like we are seeing less phosphorus leave the fields.
Okay, yeah. So essentially what you're saying is they're doing the best that they can, but one big rain event and that phosphorus can really spike, right?
Yeah, it can't predict the rain, and that's going to be when those spikes are going to be. It's ultimately up to the weather.
Unfortunate, but understandable. Okay, Katie, a question for you. So what's the first step to enroll in H2Ohio? If I'm a producer, what do I need to do? Very first thing.
Yeah, and I know it expresses a lot. Contact your local soil and water is the first and foremost. But second, have your soil test updated. If I tell people if you have at least a 2022 or 21, then you will be set for the next 2 contracts years, because those will be for every 4 years is what we look at. And then have your prescription maps ready. So if you do any precision applications in your field, we're going to need to upload the prescription maps. So updated soil tests and prescription maps.
Okay, perfect. Let's see, let's go back to the Habry project and talking about the manure that we use in that project. Is there any other type of manure application that we could potentially look at for this project?
So currently in our Habry project, in the at least in experiment 1, where we're using it as a Sidedress material, we've always applied liquid manure, whether it's in a tanker, a drag line, or this year we're using a Cadman toolbar. It's all been liquid. It's all been, I believe, swine or dairy manure. As of right now in this experiment, we don't have anything set up to look at poultry litter or something like dry manure or beef manure. We don't have the capabilities of that right now, at least the way the study was set up, but it's definitely something in the future that could be looked at.
Great, because I know liquid manure is not all that's used, especially up here in Northwest Ohio. There's a ton of different stuff getting put on all the time. Okay, so Katie, one thing, I'm a big cover crop fan. I try to push those to my audience all the time. But one question I had about what you mentioned with the manure practice is how they kind of interact with each other. So does the cover crop have to overwinter like completely to be able to fulfill that practice requirement for the manure practice?
Yeah, great question. We get this question a lot too. To get the manure payment, the cover crop does not have to overwinter. But I will say, if you do have an overwintering cover crop where at least 50% of the mix overwinters, you will get an additional $40 an acre, which is the overwintering cover crop payment. So to receive the manure payment, no, it does not have to overwinter. But if you want to receive the overwintering payment too, then yes.
Okay, cool. So you can kind of get 2 practices in one there.
Yep, exactly.
Cool. Okay, and what happens if a producer doesn't complete a practice, or if they don't completely follow the guidelines? Is there a penalty, or what happens?
Yeah, I promise I'm not gonna send the cops to your door to take all your land and throw you in jail or anything. Actually, if you don't complete a practice, you simply do not get a payment on those acres. You could get a payment for the other fields that you may have done, but on the field that you either didn't follow the guidelines or over applied or something didn't go right, simply just no payment on those acres.
Okay.
If you don't follow the manure or any practice guidelines, it depends on the situation. It'll result in no payment for that crop year, or that's specifically for the manure practice. But again, no payment is the big answer if you just don't follow the rules.
Okay, so you're not going to take out a list and cross their name off in big red marker, right?
Right.
Okay. So back to Amber here. What does it mean that none of that research data results have been significant? Does that research really even say anything then?
So when I mean it's not significant, I mean when we run it through a statistics program, it says it's not significant, which sometimes that's just, it can be that year, depending on how the environment was, how the corn did. It wasn't different significantly. So it just means for that year and that conditions, it wasn't significant. We could see something entirely different when we look at 2023's data at the end of the year. It just means, at least for this year, we didn't see anything that mattered. But it doesn't mean that it doesn't matter, I should say. It just seems we didn't see anything that was different. The practices weren't different. So in our mind, it means you can be applying that manure as a Sidedress material, and you're not going to see some huge amount of nitrates or some huge amount of phosphorus in your plants. They're going to grow and do just as fine as they would if you applied that commercial fertilizer. So this just is showing farmers that, hey, potentially, if you have that manure and you need to get rid of it, or you're about full, you can apply it as at Sidedress instead of applying regular commercial fertilizer to your corn, and it would do just as well. And there would be no difference as if it was applied either or material.
Right, so that brings up a good point. That's something to think about, that the manure treatments weren't statistically worse than the commercial fertilizer. So you can think about it two ways then, as you know, it's kind of a bonus material. If you can get it for cheaper than you would commercial fertilizer, it does just as well. So that's good. So we did learn one thing, at least from the first year of the study, right?
Yes, even if we didn't learn that there was a difference, sometimes seeing a difference isn't what you're looking for.
Right. And then I guess two more questions for H2Ohio that kind of go together are, when will producers receive payments for that manure practice? And then what do they need to do to complete that to get the payment?
Yeah, so to receive the payment for the manure practice, if you apply it after July 1st, so after wheat or an early bean, we'll have to wait till after that March 15th deadline for see if this cover crop establishes. And then for in-season applications, like I was talking before, anything done before July 1st. So once your documentation is turned in, and then we can start doing the payments after the July 1st. And then your other question to what they need to complete to get the manure payments, since everything is going to be done through My Farms now, so you'll have to make sure, obviously, you have a My Farms account and everything. Within there will be a spot to record how much per acre you applied to what field. You'll need a manure analysis, and then the date of application, the weather conditions, and your cover crop info. And again, those will be within the standards that we write, and more information from your soil and water and how you can turn that into them.
Okay, and is there going to be any sort of like region-wide like training or in-service or anything for people who haven't used My Farms before and need a little bit of help learning how to do that?
Right now we are just now getting trained on it, so I've only had one 1-hour session with it. So I think they're focusing on getting the techs trained on it and the ag retailers trained on it. And then I think each soil and water is going to play a big part of helping their producers learn and understand My Farms. Whether or not ODA or anybody up top is going to do that, I am unsure at the moment. They might. But like I said, we're going to focus on getting the techs trained, focus on getting the ag retailers and consultants trained. And then it might be up to the soil and water to help get their people trained. There will be handouts on what to do for the My Farms programs given to the techs that will be relayed out to the producers and stuff. But I think the key thing for a successful H2Ohio sign up to be a successful H2Ohio producer is the communication with your soil and water. I can't stress that enough, because if you don't communicate with them, they don't know what's going on with your farm, with your practices, and then they can't upload and document and verify everything they need to do in order to get you a payment for your practices.
Okay, good point. So essentially keeping in contact with soil and water and those retailers is really going to be key for this.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. So one thing I'm thinking about with this Tabry project, Amber, is there anywhere that I can just go and look at this data more in depth later? Can I learn a little bit more about it anywhere?
Yes, I believe all of this data, anything we've done, we put out a couple fact sheets on it, some general overviews of the projects. You can go to our water quality extension website. It's all posted there. I believe it's just water quality extension at osu.edu, and it should be there, fact sheets about it, anything you need to know. And it's a way you can reach out to our team as well if you want to see more of the individual graphs or individual work.
Great. All right, well, that's all the questions I have right now. We are going to take a minute and let the audience think of any more potential questions that they might have. And I'm going to launch our poll for the CLM credits. So if you need CLM credits, definitely answer yes on this poll. If you don't have to respond, or you can just hit no, and we will make sure that ODA gets you the credits that you need. If you are here for your certified crop advisor credits, go ahead and open up your CCA app and scan this QR code, and you will be given the credits for this event. If you are a CCA and you don't have the app or you need additional help, just reach out to me after the webinar. I will put my email address in the chat, and I will make sure that you get the credits. And we'll just take a minute here, go through this, get any questions that come through the chat. And then I have some updates for after this. But as usual, this webinar is being recorded and it will be posted to YouTube, to our CLM webinar playlist within the OSU Agronomy Team channel. It'll be made available shortly, usually within a week or two. And we will send a follow-up email to everyone who registered with that recording link, so that you'll be able to view that later. We'll also send any handouts that our presenters had for today, or anything that supplements the Q&A session. We'll send that out afterwards also. And as I mentioned before, we also are having our Water Quality Wednesday webinar series here for 2024. That will be the last Wednesday of the month, January through March, the same time block as the CLM webinar series. And we will continue the CLM webinar series. One thing is, we don't really know what you guys want to hear, so we're just kind of shooting in the dark here. So if you have suggestions on topics that you would really like to hear more about, please do not hesitate to send those to us, whether it's through the chat here during this webinar, during Water Quality Wednesday webinars, or sending our team an email. And I dropped our team email in the chat earlier during the webinar today. So I'm not seeing any Q&A questions coming through right now. So Katie and Amber, do you have any last points or takeaway messages you want to share?
No, I just want to thank you guys for having me here today to kind of promote the H2Ohio program. Feel free to reach out to me. My contact information was in the PowerPoint, and I can send it to Rachel too to pass out if you have any further questions. Just know I'm a technician. I really don't have any say on what the rules and guidelines are. That's all above me. I'm just here to implement them and teach you guys about them so you can understand the practice and what we're doing. But again, thank you so much for having me present, and that's it.
Yeah, I appreciate the chance to present some of our work our team's doing. We like to get our work out there and show that what we're doing, it's a lot of on-farm research, and we are generating results from all the hard work we do.
Great, and I want to thank both of our speakers again for taking the time to be here this morning and the time to prepare your presentations, work out all the kinks with Zoom, things like that. So we are going to wrap up a little bit early today. So thank you all for joining us, and we will be in touch with a follow-up email just shortly. So thank you.